You were only 7 years old when you first learned to read a room before you spoke, when your mother's silence became a language you had no choice but to master, when keeping peace became your responsibility and childhood turned into something you watched other kids enjoy from a distance. You didn't grow up too fast because you wanted to. You were forced into a psychological role that should never exist, and it left you with traits most people will never understand, rare traits that psychology is only now beginning to explain. Not all of them easy, but all of them profound. So if you were the child who became the adult before you were ready, this is what that experience carved into your psychology. If this already feels familiar, subscribe and drop a comment. You are not alone. Psychology has a name for what happened to you: parentification. It's when a child becomes the emotional caregiver for adults who should have been caring for them. And when this happens during critical developmental years, it doesn't just hurt, it rewires how your brain processes safety, love, and your own worth. But here's what most people miss. That rewiring created traits in you that are genuinely rare. Let's talk about what you became. The first trait is what psychologists call hyper-vigilant empathy. You can read people with uncanny accuracy. You walk into a room, and within seconds, you know who's upset, who's lying, who needs managing. It's not a gift you asked for, it's a survival skill you had to master. Most people rely on words. You learned to read micro-expressions, tone shifts, the pauses between sentences. You became fluent in unspoken pain because your safety depended on predicting adult emotions before they exploded. And yes, this makes you an incredible friend, partner, or therapist, but it also leaves you exhausted because you can't turn it off. You're scanning threats that aren't there anymore. You're managing emotions that aren't your responsibility. Your nervous system never learned the difference between empathy and survival. The second trait is hyper-independence, but not in the way people think. You don't ask for help because somewhere deep inside, you learned that needing someone is dangerous. Vulnerability felt like abandonment. When you were the child holding your family together, asking for support wasn't an option, so you built walls so high that even you can't see over them. You became the person everyone leans on, but you lean on no one. And here's the tragedy: you're not truly independent, you're isolated. Real independence means you can choose to rely on others. You don't have that choice because your childhood taught you that adults aren't safe, that support is conditional, that you're on your own. Psychology calls this avoidant attachment disguised as strength, and the world celebrates it. Look how strong you are. Look how you never need anything. But strength without softness isn't strength. It's armor fused to your skin. The third trait is what I call borrowed maturity. You were praised for being wise beyond your years, so responsible, so composed, but that maturity wasn't earned. It was stolen from the childhood you should have had. You learned to speak like an adult, think like an adult, comfort like an adult, but underneath that performance, there's still a child who never got to play, to be reckless, to make mistakes without the weight of the world pressing down. And now, as an adult, there's a strange disconnect. You can handle massive responsibilities, complex emotional situations, professional pressure, but small joys feel foreign. Playfulness feels fake. Rest feels wrong because your nervous system only knows one mode: on. Psychologists call this developmental foreclosure. You skipped stages you needed, and you can't go back. But you can grieve what was taken, and in that grief, you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned. The fourth trait is boundaries wrapped in guilt. Even now, saying no feels like betrayal. Taking space feels selfish. Prioritizing yourself feels like abandonment, because when you were a child, your boundaries were consistently violated. Your needs were inconvenient. Your feelings were too much. So you learned to shrink, to accommodate, to make yourself small enough that maybe, just maybe, you'd be worth keeping. This creates what psychologists call boundary confusion. You can't tell where you end and others begin. You absorb their moods, their problems, their responsibilities, and then you resent them for it, even though you never said no. But here's the truth. Boundaries aren't walls. They're not rejection. They're the sacred space where you finally get to exist without performing, without fixing, without disappearing. Learning to hold them without guilt is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but it's how you stop living in survival mode. And finally, the rarest trait of all, the witness wound. You see things other people miss, patterns, pain, potential. You understand human psychology on a level that can't be taught because you lived it, you survived it. You know what it looks like when someone is pretending to be fine. You know the sound of a cry for help that no one else hears. You became a translator of human suffering because you had to translate your own just to survive. This makes you powerful, quietly, profoundly powerful, but it also means you feel everything. You carry other people's pain like it's your own. You see the child in every broken adult, and sometimes you forget to witness yourself. So here's your permission. You don't have to save everyone. You don't have to understand everyone. You don't have to be the emotional archaeologist for every person who crosses your path. You can choose to witness yourself first, to hold your own hand, to finally be the person who shows up for the child you once were. If you carry these traits, know this: you are not broken. You are not too much. You are someone who survived what should not have been survivable, and those traits that feel like curses are also proof that you are still here, still fighting, still capable of profound transformation. The child you were deserved better. The adult you are deserves rest. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means finally letting that child come home. For more psychology content on trauma, healing, and the hidden patterns that shape us, check out my newsletter in the description. Real insight, no fluff, just truth. You grew up too fast, but you are still growing, and this time, you get to do it your way.